I have received 0 inquiries and no comments regarding my general framework for classifying technology. Despite, or because of this level of interest, I have decided to expand my explanation and knife hand towards a couple of complex examples that hopefully illuminate why the military does what it does when it comes to the so-called innovation and advancement of practical technology. Engineering, even in its more mundane forms, is complex, and the whole point is to find and run the relevant numbers. How do you establish relevancy without resorting to numbers? The answer to this is surprisingly simple. You make a judgment about where and how an artifact of technology fits into the following. There are 5 broadly applicable general categories that relate where any one artifact is in this engineering cycle. Good ideas are potentially new developments that have just been committed to paper. This doesn't necessarily mean that engineering drawings exist. It means that someone has written up a reasonably short list of bullet points specifying the necessary and sufficient conditions an artifact must meet in order to solve a known problem. However, it must be remembered it is easy and tempting enough on the part of an artifact builder to overstep their authority by hijacking the specification for reasons other than those that address the known problem. These reasons may be based on sound engineering judgment, or they may not. The tension and interplay between specifier and builder must be carefully managed by both parties if a successful product is to result. In the examples we will look at here, the Pentagon and its sheet of specification is the vision. Solutions in search of a problem are artifacts that have had issues during their good idea phase. These artifacts might be working, however they do not meet the necessary and sufficient conditions for solving the problem. The engineering term for these artifacts is an inefficient solution. Such artifacts are by design wasteful, inelegant works of art. A great and well-published example of this is the Spruce Goose, but more on that later. Mechanical curiosities are successful artifacts that meet the necessary and sufficient conditions for solving the problem. The engineering term for these artifacts is an efficient solution. The first example of its kind will naturally be a curiosity to everyone except the specifier and the builder. Some artifacts, such as Formula One engines, remain in this category, never finding use outside their original application. Technological institutions are artifacts that go beyond just meeting the necessary and sufficient conditions for solving a problem. Technological institutions are widely recognized as solving many problems. To state this in a formal sense, technological institutions represent the area where logistics and physics converge. Artifacts are by nature dependent on their energy source, and the energy source is in turn dependent on a mass of some description. There is a limit to how and where this mass may be utilized depending on the specifics of each unique iteration of the problem that the artifact solves. Style-driven engineering takes the artifact of a technological institution and refines them in accountant and entrepreneurial terms. Here, the entrepreneur manipulates the numbers within the confines of the technological institution and its convergent logistical and physical envelopes, in such a way to provide a return on investment per volume of product produced. I haven't just picked these categories at random. They all fit into a flow. The decision points become obvious once the categories are shown as a flow. There are 3 critical evaluation periods. The first critical evaluation is done between the builder and the specifier, perhaps best described as a design committee. And it is over once the specifier accepts the artifact. This acceptance by the specifier moves the technology to the category mechanical curiosity. An artifact rejected by a specifier is relegated to the category of a solution looking for a problem. The second critical evaluation is done by what might be termed the primary beneficial user. This is a lengthy period that persists until the artifact has, in engineering terms, been fully optimized. There may be multiple optimizations depending on the operation and use of the artifact. The third critical evaluation is done by business accountants. You can call them entrepreneurs if you like, and their calculations are driven by what is best called stylistic choices. Sure, there's some engineering going on, however, that engineering does not fundamentally affect the base usefulness of the artifact. To be sure, these stylistic changes matter. They do appear to sell units, However, to me, it appears to be the common practice of Silicon Valley and the like to package style-driven engineering as technological institutional change, a so-called paradigm shift. To me, this practice goes by another 5-letter word: fraud. If all of this seems a bit confusing, I'm going to go over a couple of examples. The Jeep is a perfect example of a good idea that has progressed through all the phases, has produced multiple artifacts, and shows the depth of involvement between the builder and the specifier. This is a well-known story, and why its lessons are ignored by the modern engineering community is completely baffling to me. The depth of both the Army's need and the procurement process at the time are too much to go into in detail in this video. However, I would like to point out that the industry side initially balked at the idea that such a vehicle as requested by the Army was possible. The numerous precursor vehicles to the Jeep were all dismissed by the Army Design Committee, and industry was well aware that they were not being asked to simply make a few style-driven engineering decisions. So, despite what people like Steve Blank might either imply or tell you, there were no, quote, Steve Jobs on the industry side when it comes to the Jeep. The visionary was the Pentagon and its massive design committee, which you might know as the military industrial complex. The vision was well known to everyone who was in any sort of position to do something about it. From the many potential industry sources who were part of the wider military-industrial conversation regarding the Jeep, a multi-agency formal specification emerged. This formal specification inaugurated a short list of companies who might have the capability to produce the required artifact. The companies on the short list were given just enough time to artifice their contraptions before the formal testing began, and an eventual winner was declared. All companies involved in the competition provided valuable data and input as the Jeep was finalized. Once the design was finalized, production began, and it is at this point that the Jeep slowly rolled out to the soldiers who were the beneficial users, and with their approval, the Jeep became a technological institution. There were multiple uses for the Jeep, even in the military. These differing uses requiring different logistical arrangements and modifications abound. Some of these modifications made by the soldiers may be thought of as a military variation on rebadge engineering. Here we see the different badges of a staff car and a special use vehicle. And it's important to keep in mind that the automakers who were building the Jeep for the war effort were well versed with the concepts of rebadge engineering, and with the Jeep they had a real winner on their hands. Thus, after the war, the civilian car industry was quick to rebadge the Jeep, and that process has continued to this day. You can still buy a Jeep, even if all its subsystems have repeatedly followed this engineering cycle, which I have just shown you. Now about solutions looking for a problem. This is the much maligned Spruce Goose, itself arguably a product of the military-industrial complex, owing its original military specification in 1942 to the so-called happy time of the U-boat. It would not fly further than a mile until 1947, well after the war. I believe I am being kind when I refer to this artifact as inefficient. Though if anyone thinks I have placed this artifact in the wrong category, please let me know in the comments.